Nobody expected their lunch order to be their last meal. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday in Willow Creek, population 8,400, the kind of place where everyone waves at their neighbors, and the biggest excitement is usually the high school football game on Friday nights. But on this particular afternoon, what started as a busy lunch rush at the local burger barn would become the worst mass casualty event in the town's history. 17 people, 17 lives cut short by someone they trusted to serve their food safely, someone who smiled at them across the counter, someone who knew their usual orders. But who was on his list, and why? The answer will change how you see everyone around you. Before we dive into this twisted story, hit subscribe, because the truth behind this case goes deeper than anyone imagined. For almost 3 years, Daniel Price was just another face at Burger Barn. 26 years old, thin build, always wore his uniform polo tucked in perfectly. The kind of employee managers love, showed up on time, never called in sick, never complained about working doubles. His co-workers barely knew him. Sarah Martinez, who worked the morning shift, later told investigators he was polite but distant, like he was always watching, taking mental notes. Daniel lived alone in a studio apartment 3 blocks from work. No girlfriend, no close friends, no social media presence. His neighbors described him as that quiet guy who never made noise, the perfect, invisible man. But here's what's crazy. Daniel wasn't always this way. High school yearbook photos show a different person entirely. Daniel played JV basketball, had a girlfriend, even ran for student council. Teachers remember him as bright, maybe a little intense, but engaged with life. So what happened? College happened. Or rather, college didn't happen. Daniel's family couldn't afford tuition, and his grades weren't quite good enough for significant scholarships. While his friends moved on to universities across the state, Daniel stayed behind, working retail jobs and watching his dreams slip away. By 2019, when he started at Burger Barn, the cheerful teenager had become a bitter young man who felt the world owed him something. He was always professional, remembers manager Tom Hendricks. Never rude to customers, followed procedures, but there was this energy about him, like he was keeping score of something. Tom was more right than he could have imagined. Here's where things get twisted. In Daniel's employee locker, tucked behind his spare uniform, was a small spiral notebook. 79 pages of handwritten entries, dating back to his 2nd week of employment. Each page contained names, lots of names. Mrs. Rodriguez always complains about wait time, thinks she's special. Jake Morrison smirks when ordering, probably makes more in a day than I do in a month. Linda Patterson never tips, acts like I'm beneath her. The detective who found the notebook, Maria Santos, said it was like reading the diary of someone slowly losing their grip on reality. At first, the entries were just observations, Detective Santos explained during the trial. But as you read further, they become judgments, then fantasies about teaching these people lessons, then plans. Daniel had been watching, learning routines, recording who ordered what, when they came in, who they came with. Some entries included home addresses, vehicle descriptions, even details about family members. The notebook contained 347 names. 17 of them had small check marks next to them. But what pushed Daniel from angry observations to deadly action? The answer lies in a series of workplace incidents that his supervisors never connected. March 2021. Daniel was written up for attitude problems after a customer complained he seemed annoyed while taking their order. June 2021, passed over for a shift supervisor promotion that went to Jessica Walsh, a newer employee who Daniel felt was less qualified. September 2021, received a verbal warning for arguing with a customer who claimed their order was wrong. Each incident fed into Daniel's growing resentment. He started staying after his shifts, sometimes until 2 a.m., sitting in the parking lot watching the empty restaurant. Co-workers noticed him having conversations with himself while cleaning equipment. Looking back, there were so many red flags, says former co-worker Amy Chen. He'd mutter things under his breath. Sometimes he'd laugh at nothing. but he was never threatening to us, so we just ignored it. The tipping point came in January 2022. Daniel requested time off for a job interview at the county clerk's office, a position that would have doubled his salary and given him the respect he craved. His request was denied because they were short-staffed. He missed the interview. Someone else got the job. That night, Daniel made his first checkmark in the notebook. Daniel spent months perfecting his plan. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was calculated, methodical, and terrifyingly patient. He researched online, learning about substances that could cause delayed reactions. He studied the restaurant's supplier schedules, memorizing when deliveries arrived and who handled them. He even volunteered for extra cleaning duties to learn every corner of the kitchen. The level of planning will shock you. Make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next defies belief. Daniel's plan was diabolically simple. Rather than acting randomly, he would target specific individuals on specific days, using his inside knowledge of their routines. Mrs. Rodriguez always came in at 12:15 p.m. on Tuesdays for her usual chicken sandwich meal. Jake Morrison stopped by every Thursday after his gym workout, always ordered a large coffee and protein bowl. Linda Patterson brought her book club friends in on the first Saturday of every month. Daniel knew their orders by heart. More importantly, he knew exactly how to modify them. The beauty of his plan, from his twisted perspective, was that it would look like random food poisoning incidents. Different people, different days, different symptoms, no obvious pattern to connect them to him or the restaurant. He spent weeks practicing his technique during quiet periods, timing how long it took to make the modifications without being noticed by cameras or co-workers. Tuesday, April 19th, 2022, a date that Willow Creek will never forget. The lunch rush started normally. Daniel clocked in at 10:30 a.m., tied his apron, and took his position at the grill. His manager, Tom, later said Daniel seemed unusually cheerful that morning. He was almost excited, Tom recalled, made jokes with the other employees, even offered to help with prep work he usually avoided. I thought he was finally coming out of his shell. At 11:45 a.m., the lunch crowd began arriving. Construction workers from the highway project, office employees from the insurance agency next door, retired folks who made Burger Barn their daily social hour. Daniel knew exactly who he was waiting for. 12:15 p.m. Mrs. Rodriguez walked through the door, same as every Tuesday for the past 2 years. Ordered her usual chicken sandwich meal, no tomatoes, extra pickles. Daniel smiled, said, "Coming right up, Mrs. R," and got to work. What happened next took less than 30 seconds, but it sealed Mrs. Rodriguez's fate. 12:22 p.m. Jake Morrison arrived, still sweating from his workout, ordered his protein bowl and large coffee. Another smile from Daniel, another friendly exchange. 12:35 p.m. The Patterson Book Club arrived, 6 women in their 50s, chatting about their latest read while ordering salads and sandwiches. By 1 p.m., Daniel had served all 17 people on his list. By 1:30 p.m., the first person started feeling sick. Mrs. Rodriguez was driving home when the nausea hit. She pulled over, thinking it was just her acid reflux acting up. Within minutes, she was unconscious in her car. Jake Morrison made it to his office before collapsing in the parking lot. His co-workers found him convulsing next to his truck. One by one, across Willow Creek, people who had eaten lunch at Burger Barn were experiencing the same terrifying symptoms. The 911 call started at 1:47 p.m. "My mom won't wake up. She just came back from lunch and now she won't wake up. There's a man in our parking lot having some kind of seizure. Something's wrong with my wife. She can't stop shaking." By 2:30 p.m., Willow Creek's small hospital was overwhelmed. Ambulances were being dispatched to 17 different locations across town. Emergency room doctor Sarah Kim had seen food poisoning before, but nothing like this. The symptoms were too severe, too uniform, Dr. Kim explained to investigators. This wasn't bacterial contamination. This was something else entirely. While paramedics rushed victims to regional medical centers, Detective Maria Santos was already at Burger Barn, interviewing employees and securing the scene. "My first thought was a supply contamination," Detective Santos said. "Maybe a batch of lettuce or meat had gone bad. But when I started mapping out the victims, a pattern emerged that made my blood run cold. Every victim had been served by Daniel Price. Every victim had ordered something different. Every victim had eaten at different times throughout the lunch rush. But here's where it gets more disturbing. Not everyone who ate at Burger Barn that day got sick. Only specific people. People who, as Detective Santos would soon discover, had somehow earned Daniel's personal attention. When they searched Daniel's locker, finding that notebook felt like uncovering a roadmap to tragedy. "I've been investigating crimes for 15 years, Detective Santos said during her testimony. "I thought I'd seen everything. But reading those pages, seeing how he categorized people, ranked their perceived slights against him, it was like looking into the mind of someone who viewed other human beings as objects to be judged and eliminated." The notebook entries for the 17 victims were particularly chilling. "Mrs. R. always treats me like hired help. Time to teach some respect. Jake thinks his muscles make him better than everyone. Let's see how strong he feels. Book club ladies act like they own the place every month, not anymore." Each entry included detailed observations about their routines, their orders, even personal details Daniel had overheard during their visits. Daniel was arrested at his apartment at 6:30 p.m., still wearing his Burger Barn uniform. He didn't run, didn't resist, didn't even seem surprised to see the police at his door. In fact, he invited them in for coffee. "I knew you'd figure it out eventually," Daniel told Detective Santos during his initial interview. "I was actually kind of impressed it only took you 5 hours. The confession that followed lasted 7 hours and filled 89 pages of transcript. Daniel spoke calmly, methodically, explaining his actions with the same attention to detail he'd brought to planning them. "People don't realize how much power someone like me has," Daniel explained. "They see a fast food worker and think, loser, failure, someone who doesn't matter. But I controlled what they put in their bodies every single day. I had more impact on their lives than their doctors, their therapists, their pastors." He showed no remorse for the 17 victims, instead expressing frustration that his project had been interrupted before he could work through his entire list. "I had it planned out perfectly," Daniel said. 3 to 4 people per month, spread out enough that no one would connect them. I could have worked through the whole notebook in about 6 years. Detective Santos asked him about the families, the children who would grow up without parents, the spouses left behind. Daniel's response chilled everyone in the room. "They should have been nicer to me." News of Daniel's arrest sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. This was a town where people left their doors unlocked, where children rode bikes to school without fear, where the biggest crime story in recent memory had been teenagers spray painting the water tower. Now they had to confront the reality that someone they'd trusted, someone they'd chatted with during routine lunch runs, had been systematically targeting members of their community. "I ate there twice a week for 3 years, said local resident Mark Thompson. "Daniel knew my order, asked about my kids, seemed like a nice young man. To think he might have had me on some kind of list but changes everything." The psychological impact extended far beyond those directly affected. Residents found themselves questioning every service interaction, every casual conversation with clerks, servers, delivery drivers. If Daniel could hide such malevolent intentions behind a friendly smile, who else might be harboring similar resentments? Several other restaurants in town reported significant drops in business as people became afraid to eat out. The local diner started posting photos and brief bios of all their employees, hoping to reassure customers. Mental health counselor Patricia Williams, brought in to help the community process the trauma, said the case tapped into a fundamental fear. "We like to think we can spot dangerous people, that there are obvious warning signs." Daniel's case forced everyone to confront the uncomfortable reality that evil can look perfectly normal. Of the 17 people targeted by Daniel, 11 survived, though all suffered lasting health effects from the contamination. Jake Morrison spent 3 weeks in intensive care and still struggles with neurological issues that ended his construction career. "I keep thinking about all the times I was probably rude or dismissive to service workers," Jake said during victim impact statements. "But being rude doesn't mean you deserve to die." Mrs. Rodriguez, now 67, survived, but requires ongoing medical care. Her family says she's never been the same, more fearful, reluctant to leave her home, suspicious of anyone she doesn't know well. "She used to be so social," said her daughter Carmen. "She knew everyone in town, would chat with cashiers and servers wherever we went. Now she barely speaks to strangers. He didn't just poison her body, he poisoned her trust in people." The 6 members of the book club who survived have struggled to resume their weekly meetings. Linda Patterson, who had been singled out in Daniel's notebook for never tipping, became an advocate for service worker mental health programs. "I thought about it afterward," Linda said, "and he was right. I usually didn't tip at fast food places. I didn't think it was expected. That doesn't justify what he did, but it made me realize how invisible service workers can feel, how small slights can accumulate into something bigger." Daniel's trial began 18 months later in October 2023. Despite overwhelming evidence and his detailed confession, he pled not guilty, claiming temporary insanity. The defense painted a picture of a young man crushed by economic circumstances, failed by a system that offers little opportunity for advancement, driven to a psychological break by years of perceived disrespect from customers. Daniel Price is not a monster, his attorney argued. He's a victim of a society that discards working-class people, that treats service employees as less than human. What he did was horrific, but it was the act of someone whose mind had been broken by constant humiliation. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, focused on the meticulous planning, the calculated selection of victims, and Daniel's complete lack of remorse. "This was not a momentary break from reality," DA Walsh told the jury. "This was a sustained campaign of terror against innocent people, whose only crime was being perceived as rude by someone who appointed himself their judge and executioner." The trial lasted 6 weeks. Daniel showed no emotion as victim after victim testified about their ongoing health problems, their fear, their family's trauma. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours. Guilty on all counts, 17 counts of attempted murder, 6 counts of first-degree murder, and multiple charges related to tampering with food products. Daniel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Burger Barn closed permanently 3 months after the incident. The building now sits empty, with a small memorial garden planted by community volunteers in the front parking lot. The case prompted significant changes in food service protocols across the region. Many restaurants now require 2 employees to handle food preparation, install additional security cameras in kitchen areas, and conduct more thorough background checks and psychological evaluations for employees. The state legislature passed Daniel's law, requiring mental health resources and anonymous reporting systems for food service workers experiencing workplace stress or customer mistreatment. But perhaps the most significant change has been in how the community treats service workers. Several residents reported making conscious efforts to be more patient, more appreciative, more human in their interactions with employees. "It shouldn't take a tragedy like this to remind us that everyone deserves basic respect," said Mayor Robert Chen. "But if that's the lesson we learn from this horror, maybe some small good can come from it." Daniel Price's case isn't just about one disturbed individual. It's a window into larger societal issues that experts say we ignore at our peril. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, a forensic psychologist who evaluated Daniel, explains, "We're seeing more cases of what I call invisible anger, people in service positions who feel devalued and dehumanized by customers who see them as functionally invisible. Most cope through healthy outlets, but for some, that resentment builds into something dangerous. The economics of service work compound the problem. Low wages, no benefits, little opportunity for advancement, and constant exposure to customers who may treat workers poorly creates a perfect storm for psychological distress. Daniel's case is extreme, but the underlying feelings aren't uncommon," says workplace psychologist Dr. Jennifer Adams. "Studies show that service workers report higher rates of depression, anxiety, and feelings of powerlessness than almost any other profession. The solution isn't simple, but experts agree it starts with recognizing the humanity in every interaction." Where Daniel is now. Daniel Price is currently housed at the state's maximum security prison, where he spends 23 hours a day in his cell. Prison officials report that he's been a model inmate, quiet, follows rules, causes no trouble. He continues to show no remorse for his actions. In his only interview since sentencing, conducted by a psychology researcher studying workplace violence, Daniel expressed frustration that people still don't understand what drove him to act. "Everyone focuses on the 17 people," Daniel said, "but nobody talks about the thousands of customers who treated me like garbage every single day for 3 years. Nobody talks about the system that keeps people like me trapped in dead-end jobs while rich people get richer." When asked if he had any message for the survivors and victims' families, Daniel's response was chilling. "I hope they learned something about how to treat people." 17 lives were forever changed because a community failed to see the warning signs hiding behind a friendly smile and a tucked-in uniform. The truth is, Daniel Price could be working anywhere. The quiet cashier at your grocery store, the barista who makes your morning coffee, the server who brings your dinner. Most are kind, hard-working people just trying to make a living, but some might be keeping their own invisible lists. Here's what we learned from Willow Creek. Mental health resources must be accessible to everyone, especially those in high-stress, low-wage positions. Several warning signs that Daniel exhibited, social isolation, workplace complaints, apparent conversations with himself, could have been addressed with proper intervention. Customer behavior matters more than we realize. While rudeness doesn't justify violence, the cumulative effect of being treated poorly day after day can contribute to psychological decline in vulnerable individuals. Workplace culture must prioritize employee well-being. Managers need training to recognize signs of distress and systems to address them before they escalate. Communities must foster connection. In a town of 8,400 people, Daniel lived in complete isolation. No friends, no family nearby, no social connections that might have provided support or noticed his deteriorating mental state. Background checks and security measures help, but they can't identify someone with no criminal history who's planning their first offense. The real prevention comes from creating environments where people feel valued, supported, and heard. The case of Daniel Price forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about modern society. In our rush to efficiency, to getting what we want quickly and cheaply, we've created systems where human beings become invisible. Every day, millions of people serve our food, ring up our purchases, deliver our packages. Most are good people doing honest work. But some might be silently cataloging every perceived slight, every moment they felt disrespected or dehumanized. The notebook Daniel kept wasn't just a hit list. It was a record of a person slowly losing faith in humanity, one interaction at a time. 17 check marks that represented 17 lives he felt he had the right to end. 17 people who never imagined that their lunch order would be their last meal. We can't identify every Daniel Price before they act. But we can create a world where fewer people feel so invisible, so powerless, so filled with resentment that violence becomes their only means of feeling significant. The next time you interact with someone serving you, really look at them. See them as a person with hopes, fears, dreams, and struggles just like your own. Say thank you. Be patient when things go wrong. Remember that your few seconds of kindness might be the only human recognition they receive all day. Because somewhere out there, someone might be keeping a list. And the way you treat them could determine whether your name gets added to it. The victims of Willow Creek would want you to remember that kindness costs nothing, but its absence can cost everything. 17 lives could have been saved if someone had just paid attention. Don't let there be an 18th.